better. So would you do me a favor? Would you give him a Community Bible Church welcome, Kyle Anderson. Get it, buddy.
Thank you. You guys could be seated. Thank you guys so much for that. Like Scott said, we've actually been working on me getting out here for over a year. We tried to do this a year ago, but because of COVID, I wasn't able to come out. So I have been excited about being in person with you guys for a long time. Yesterday, I got to be a part of the US conference, and it was amazing. And I will tell you guys that I've been blown away with just the community that you guys already have here. It was so welcoming and genuine, and I've loved every bit of it. I called my wife last night, and I said, I'm looking for houses in California. And she said, no, you're not. And so I had the kids talked into moving out here, but she is not going for it just yet. But anyway, no, I've loved it out here. I've loved my time out here. And I am from Kansas, and I know every single one of you right now. You did it, didn't you? Did you in your head? You did Did you do a Kansas reference? Did you do a Toto? Did you do a Dorothy? Did you do a what did you do? Somebody did something, right? Every single place I go, somebody's like, "Do you have Toto?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And then when I was in Florida, I got it every single day. So, you know why people do that is because they have nothing else that they know about Kansas, and that's fair. Because we literally have nothing else. Like, if it wasn't for the Wizard of Oz, we would not exist. They would have just, Colorado would have taken us over or something. So, but hey, I'm thankful to be here. As Scott mentioned, we've taken kind of a similar journey. We served together in Florida, and then I was able to go back home to my home church in Kansas, which is similar to this size. And I'm an associate pastor there. I do a lot of outreach and community stuff and care stuff. And so it's been awesome for me and a blessing for me that I've, too, got to go home and continue my ministry. So today we are talking about awe, the awe of God. And I'm really excited about this because there's a lot of times that I feel like when I'm getting ready to preach something, God gives me material. And sometimes when I'm preaching about struggles and things like that, I hate it because usually God gives me material, like in the midst of me preparing for a sermon. But this one has been awesome. Because about a week and a half ago, I was able to take a trip. My son graduated from high school, and for his senior trip, we were going to take him someplace, just his mother and I. We were going to go on a trip together. And it turned out that he was supposed to go with his buddies on a trip, and that got canceled. So we ended up taking 6 18-year-olds to California. So I was literally here like a week and a half ago. And the reason why is because we had a couple of these kids that they've never seen the mountains, and a couple of them had never seen the ocean. And I thought, hey, what better place than California? So we were just out here. And I got to tell you, like I was looking for stories for this sermon and the awe of God. And man, I got it. Like I got it. Now I'll admit, we landed in Reno. Didn't get an awe there, but that's okay. But I held out because I was like, I think we're going to Tahoe, and that should be a little better. But we got to Tahoe, and we pull up in that crystal clear, amazing water. And I'm just like, wow. Like, God, wow. It's cold. I don't recommend you swim in it, but it looks great. And so we leave there, and we go to this Mammoth Lake place, and there's this hidden lake, and I'd never even heard of that place, and I was blown away, and just beautiful. And we went through Yosemite, and you come around that curve in Yosemite, and you just go, wow, like, wow. And then we made our way over to Highway 1, and we drove up Highway 1, and every time you come around the curve, I'm telling you, I'm from Kansas. No oceans, no mountains, okay? So I spent a week just going, wow, you know? And then we pull off on the side of the road and there's elephant seals. I'm like, that's my spirit animal. They just lay on the beach and they don't move really, and there's like 4 inches of fat on them. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that's my animal. Like, we're twins. So I sat there and I watched them and I thought, wow, they can like live a whole life doing this. I tried, my wife won't let me. So just wow after wow after wow. And maybe I'm crazy, but even Scott kind of laughed at me because I walked out of his front door. I keep doing it. Every time I walk out of his front door, I go, dude, wow. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. Look, those are mountains right there. Like, you walk out every day. I'm just like, wow. And then I think back to, like, I had a great opportunity, maybe, or maybe they were trying to get rid of me. I don't know, but I worked in television in Kansas. I worked for a CBS affiliate. And one of my jobs at the CBS affiliate is there was a meteorologist that took me under his wing when I was like 18 years old, and he taught me to be a storm chaser. And looking back, I think maybe he didn't like me because he sent me out when there was tornadoes. But I had a blast. I had a blast doing it. But I remember the first time that I was driving down the highway, And I was on the phone with the meteorologist, and he was like, dude, you should be seeing it. And it's right there. And I remember I came out from this tree line, and I looked up, and there was like a ginormous tornado right next to me on the ground. And I remember his next thing is like, dude, you're getting ready to go live. We're going to put you on air. Bro, the first time you see a tornado, it is not a good idea to go live on air. Because the things that I was thinking in my mind cannot be repeated in this church. I was like, ooh, like, I was scared. But wow. Like, wow. It just feels like the power of God just wrapped up right there. And then, like there was this other time where, the sports guys, they wanted to use me, and I got to go and walk with Tiger Woods for a couple days at the U.S. Open, and it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I just remember watching Tiger Woods play golf, as me, a golfer, knowing what I can do, and then watching him, I'm like, wow, like this is unreal. And then I remember one time I was in Florida, and I went deep-sea fishing with my son, and we were out of Cape Canaveral, and we were on this little boat, and all of a sudden, like all these Coast Guard guys come flying around us. Remember, Kansas, we don't have Coast Guard. And so they're like lights and sirens and machine guns, and I'm like, what is going on? And all of a sudden, a submarine comes up out of the water, and we're next to a submarine. And I'm just like, wow, like just in awe, like amazed by it. It doesn't take much to get me excited, but there's certain things that I'm just like, wow. And I can like feel God's presence, and I can see God in the midst of it. But I go back and I look at the Old Testament. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a little frustrated because when we read the Old Testament, we see God doing these amazing things, right? Like the presence of God. And what's funny is I was going to try to find the right scripture to use, and Beth had asked me, she's like, hey, are you sending any scripture? And I'm like, I haven't found it just yet. Like, I'm trying to capture in the Old Testament kind of the awe of God. But you know what? If you go through the Old Testament, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. And so I couldn't really find the right one. But as I got into it, I kept thinking Moses. And what's crazy about this is I'm like, I wish we could just have like a Moses moment. And I don't know if you guys will remember the whole story of Moses, but leading the people out of Egypt, right? His people and God's people out of Egypt. And there's this moment, and I'm going to read this, and I might paraphrase, but I just capture the big picture here. And Moses said to the people, fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. The people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they shall go after them, that they shall go after you. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his hosts, his chariots, his horsemen, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And so we know the story for those of us growing up, like, right? The people go through on dry land. There's a wall of water on both sides of them. As they cross, then the sea swallows up, right? The army. What a wow moment. Like, if we could have been a part of that, there's no doubt, right? All of us would have been like, God is real. Like, you can't, nobody else, nothing else can do that. God is real. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but you know what the dumb people that were there did? They got across dry land, and it wasn't very long after that they started griping because the water didn't taste sweet. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried to the Lord, O Lord. And the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. Okay, so now they got their sweet water, right? You just walked over dry land, and you weren't in awe. Okay, now you got your sweet water. What do they do next? They start to complain because they didn't have enough food to eat. Why did you even take us out of it? They were slaves. Why did you even take us out of there? At least we had like some food to eat. They're complaining. So God rained down some manna from heaven. Like, how many times does God have to show up? How many times do we have to be in awe of God before we go? I'm not going to complain anymore. Like, God, you are God. I've witnessed you being God. I trust that you're God. I love you. I accept it. But these people in the Old Testament, like, what is it going to take? So I got to thinking, like, I understand, okay? I understand maybe why we would be frustrated. Like the presence of God, why can't we experience that? But the more you think about it, like, we do, like we have it even better. Because God said, you know what? I'm not up here anymore. I'm not a distant God, right? That only shows up every once in a while. He says, if you accept me and you accept my Son, he will dwell within you. God's Son, the presence of God, is with us. Like we have the Holy Spirit. I mean, can you imagine, like, there's times where we're like, God, if you were just here. God's saying, I did that. Like, I am right there with you. But the question is, are we in awe? I mean, I've asked God, like, I need your presence. God, I've needed your power. God, I've needed this from you, right? I remember one time, I was about 28, 29 years old. And I remember my sister was going through some medical problems. I think she has Crohn's and maybe celiac. She's got a whole lot of health problems. I was about 28 years old, and I remember my sister called me, and she said, hey, I need you to do me a favor. And I was like, sure, what do you need me to do? She said, I need you to go get a colonoscopy. And I was like, okay, is there anything else that I could do? Because I'd rather not do that for you. I love you, but please no. And she was like, no, it's potentially a genetic thing. And she's like, this is the only thing, like, that will know definitively what's wrong with me. So I go to the doctor, and I tell him, I said, listen, here's the deal. I tell him the story, and I said, I need to get a colonoscopy. He said, do you have any symptoms? I said, no. He said, is there anything wrong with you? And I said, no. He goes, why do you want it? And I said, listen, just do it. I said, humor me. Nobody comes in here and says, hey, I want one for fun. You know, I was like, I need to do this for my sister. So I go, and they schedule the appointment, and the thing about it is the doctor didn't take me serious. And so when we go into the procedure, he gives me just enough to keep me asleep for just a little while, and I wake up in the middle of the procedure. And something is going horribly wrong in the middle of the procedure. And so I remember they knocked me back out. It might have been with a hammer. I don't remember, but it happened fast. And I remember going into recovery, and then all of a sudden I remember looking at my wife, and I said, something's wrong. Like, something's wrong. And she said, no, honey. And she gave me the speech about, you're going to be gassy. And I was like, babe, I'm almost 30 years old. Like, I know what gassy, like, something's wrong. And she kind of, and finally I kind of snapped a little bit, and I'm like, help. And what happened was where they had gone in, they found a tumor the size of a tangerine. Nobody knew it was there. And they tried to remove it, but they didn't do a very good job because they weren't prepared to find anything. So I go into the recovery, and it busts open, and I'm bleeding out. And so they rushed me back in there. And I remember, you know, you go from like, this is no big deal, to all of a sudden you're like, I think I'm fighting for my life right now. And they put me under there. And I remember the doctor was frantic. He was frantic. And for some reason, they couldn't put me completely back under because I'd just come out. I don't know what the deal was, but I was basically awake. And I remember the doctor saying, I can't fix it. I can't find it. And then all of a sudden, this peace, let me tell you about this peace. It came over me where I was like, oh, this is nice. Like, this is good. And I distinctly remember thinking, my wife is a great woman. She'll do a great job raising the kids. The peace that I felt, I was excited to go somewhere else. I was dying. And I remember distinctly, I closed my eyes, and I smiled, and I thought, this has been a good run. I am ready to go home to heaven. And as I smiled and laid my head back, the doctor goes, got it. And I'm like, man, whatever you did, don't do it. Like, I was ready. I have a great life. I have a great wife. I have 3 amazing kids. But can I tell you, if you feel the presence of God, you don't want to be here anymore. Like, there's something better. And I was in awe of that presence. Like, in awe. I had never felt it before. But when you feel it, you lay there, you stand there, you sit there, and you are in awe of God because it is good. And so I go through life, and I long for the presence, and even in the struggles, I've longed for God's grace, and I've screwed up, and I've messed up, and there's been so many times that I've wondered, like, God, are you in the midst? Like, are you walking with me right now, God? Are you here on this journey? Like, are you working upstream? Are you helping me? Because sometimes I just feel like lost. Like, God, are you absent? And then God does things where he blows me away. He absolutely blows me away. I remember when I was growing up, I had this best friend. And his name was TJ. And I remember that he and I were like identical. We were like the same dude. And he was an all-American kid. He could sing. He was good looking. He dated all the good looking girls. And he and I would always talk about how we were going to go into ministry together. And so we would start like a group in high school, and then it would kind of phase out, or we would start something, and then one of us would go off the deep end and start drinking or get into trouble. I've been in a lot of trouble in my life. I was a mess when I was younger, like a mess. But me and TJ, we would try to do this together. We were always trying to do this together. We got to college, and TJ and I were going to the same university, and TJ decided that he was going to run for Stuco president. And I remember when he was running for Stuco president, he asked me, he's like, come along with me, man, like, get into this. But the problem was, like, you had to join, like, frats, you know, and it was going to be partying and all this. And I told TJ, I said, man, I don't think that this is a good idea. Like, I don't think, man, I should be involved. Like, man, I got to pass old Frank the Tank, come back out. And so I was like, nah, man, it's just not for me. So TJ kind of started going his way, and I started going my way, and we would hang out sometimes. But then I started to kind of get into ministry. I got married, and I started having kids, and TJ actually had got this girl pregnant, and then she decided that she didn't want to be with him. And for TJ, it like wrecked his world, because he had always dreamed of, like, I'm going to be in ministry someday when I get cleaned up. And when all that happened, he decided, like, I no longer can be in ministry. Something happened in him where he just broke. Got into drugs, and he got into a bunch of stuff. And I remember when we were seniors, we had made promises to each other, like, someday, man, we'll do ministry together. It just never happened. So we get to our 10-year class reunion. Now, I remember I jumped in with one of my other buddies. I said, let's go over to TJ's house, man. Let's see what he's up to. Like, for old time's sake, let's jump in the car together and drive around town and act stupid like we did when we were 18. I was a minister at this time. So we go to his door, we knock on him, we say, hey, where's TJ? And his mom comes out, she goes, I'm sorry. I need to tell you that TJ, he's gotten in a lot of trouble, and he's in prison now. The judge, like, warned him, thin him. I couldn't believe it. Like, my best friend now, prison. So we go to our class reunion that night, and all of a sudden the president comes around and she drops off these letters. None of us know what these letters are. And we open them up, and they're a letter that we wrote to ourselves when we were 18 years old when we were seniors. And it was a letter from ourselves. And I was a class clown. I was an idiot. So I'm reading my letter, you know, to my wife, and I'm like, oh, you're probably working for the circus. You're probably, you know, I was something stupid, because that's what I did. But I didn't know this. But our president knew that TJ had gone to prison, and she sent his letter to prison. And so TJ is sitting on the edge of his cot, and he opens up this letter. He can't figure out who it is. And then he realizes it's him. A letter that he had wrote to himself 10 years earlier. And it says, TJ, you're probably living your dreams. You're probably a pastor now. Like, you're probably doing what God had called you to do. And he's sitting in prison on a cot. It dawned on me, like, I'd kind of separated myself from TJ because he was getting into so much trouble, I didn't really want to run the family. But I thought, I'm a pastor. A pastor can get in there to do jail ministry whenever they want. So I got my pass, and I show up one day, and I said, TJ, what's up, brother? And he's like, man, like, you came. Like, you came to visit me. And I said, yeah, you better believe it. Like, I'm here. Like, I'm here. I said, maybe it's time, like, for us to do ministry together. Like, maybe it's time that we do what God called us to do. And so here we are on separate sides of glass, right? And he's over there, and he's encouraging me, and I'm encouraging him, and he's like, dude, I'm getting ordained in prison, and I'm starting a prison ministry like in here, and I'm going after all of them. I'm like, yeah. And so all these other families were lined up, and guys would come out that had like been murderers, and families like were crying, and me and TJ are laughing, big on the glass, we're like, oh, God's awesome. Everybody looking at us like, what are you doing? We got something different. And it didn't matter. It did not matter that TJ was behind that glass. It didn't matter that he was in prison. It didn't matter any of that. Like God had directed his path, and I was in awe of it. I was in awe because God said, I am going to use your ministry. You don't know how, but I'm going to show you. And it might take me putting you on a cot and sending you a letter from yourself to wake you up. But God said, I'm in the midst of this. I am working upstream. I had a hand in that letter 10 years ago. Who would have thought? Like we're doing ministry on opposite sides of the glass. And I'm going after youth group kids in our community, and he's going after murderers. I'm in awe of God's plan because it was perfect. Like we never dreamed when we were kids that that's how God would have used it. But it was beautiful. And it was amazing. It was just fun. That sounds weird. But I mean, I remember the only view he had out of his cell is he could see a Chinese buffet. And I remember when I come visit him, I said, dude, what's the first thing we're doing? He's like, dude, I'm going over there and I'm that buffet, man. That's all I can think about. And I'm like, okay, as soon as you get out, we go eat the buffet. That's all he could see, buffet. He didn't care. He didn't care. He had the most joy he had ever had. Because inside those walls, it was him and God. That's it. And he got out and he asked me, he said, can I come work with your youth group? And I said, dude, absolutely, you come work with my youth. Like, I would love that. And then he worked with my youth group for a couple months. And he said, listen, you don't know this, but I was in a homeless shelter in Tulsa. He said, I had nothing. And he goes, I feel God's calling me to go back. I got to go back to that homeless shelter. And he goes, I got to preach. I got to minister. I said, go, dude, you go. You go. I was in Florida for a couple years, and I got this phone call one night, and it was TJ. And actually, he left me a voicemail, and he said, man, I just had the craziest dream about you and I. He said, like, this is a vision from God. He said, I'll call you tomorrow, man. We're going to talk. I got a call that next day, and TJ actually passed away in the middle of the night. And he had broke his arm. He was taking some pain pills and couldn't sleep that night. So he took some sleeping pills on top of his pain pills, and because of some of his past drug use, his heart just gave out. And so they called, man, I was devastated. You guys can imagine. They called me and they said, we need you to fly home. Will you preach his funeral? And I said, yeah. I said, I can. But I said, you know, when he got out, we had him in our church and we filmed him giving his testimony. I said, I don't think there'd be anything cool in the world than if TJ preached his own funeral. Because he had this passion about like God's restoration and healing and grace and the power of it. And I said, why wouldn't he preach his own? And so at his funeral, I walk off the stage and you see him walk up behind me and he preaches his own funeral. And I was in awe of that. Like in the struggle, I was in awe that God had set everything up. It was amazing. And then I remember we did the funeral and I flew home and his dad sent me a picture a couple weeks later and they finally got his headstone. And this headstone simply just says, saved by grace. And I'm in awe of that. Because here's what I'm here to tell you today. We need to get back into being in awe of God. We need to in every circumstance, be able to look and say, God, I feel your presence and I'm in awe of that. Or we need to be able to say, God, I don't understand the season I'm in right now, but I trust you. And God, I know there's something good coming. And God, I'm in awe of what you're going to do with me. Or we say, God, I have been a sinner and broken for a long time. But God, you restored me through your son, Jesus. Like I'm made new. And God, I'm in awe of that. Like there's so many things that we can be in awe of. But the one that gets me more than anything is I think about the Old Testament and that presence of God. But can I tell you this? They didn't get the Son of God. They didn't get Jesus. We got Jesus. I got Jesus. Every single one of you got the gift of Jesus. And you know what? It doesn't matter your past. It doesn't matter if you're broken right now. It doesn't matter if you're sitting at home and you don't want to come to church because you're like, oh, lightning's going to hit the church if I come. Wrong. You got Jesus. And he died for us individually. My name, my face. It was for me. Like he knows me. I am in awe of that. The creator of the universe not only knows me, but he loved me enough to send his son to spill blood to save me. God, I'm in awe. I'm in awe. If you're sitting here today, you're in this room, or you're home, put yourself in a position to be in awe of God. Could I ask you, if you've got a next step, if you're like, I need to get plugged into a group, I need to be on a team, can I tell you to trust God and make the step? If you're in this room today or sitting at home and you're like, I'm this close. I'm this close to accepting Jesus or to knowing more about Jesus. Can I tell you, do it. Because that step is going to be the one that's going to make you in awe of God. Because that's what God says. He says, just take one step. Just take one towards me. I'm standing right here. Sometimes we're not in awe of God because we choose not to be in awe of God. But when we step out in faith and we start trusting him and we say, God, my life is yours, you're going to get in awe of God because he's going to do something amazing. I'm in awe. I flew halfway across the country to a community that I don't know, that people I don't know, and you know what I found? Family. God's church right here. God's people. And when I walked in the doors, I was like, family. That's God. I'm in awe of that. I love you guys already. It's crazy. That can only be through Jesus Christ. I say we worship him.